this video, I'm going to show you how to assemble the Avid 4x4 CNC Router Pro. There's a lot of pieces, and I'll show you how it all goes together. This aluminum channel has T-slots that run the whole length, and it's assembled using these T-nuts. Most of the time, it's easier to put the T-nuts on first and then slide it into the channel. Use a piece of wood 360 millimeters long to make sure that all of the cross beams are spaced properly. You'll want to use a ball nose Allen wrench to tighten up all the bolts. First, put all the T-nuts down the whole length. We'll slide it in the T-channel. Next, put the calibration jigs on either end. Just push the guide rail up to the calibration block and tighten that. Do this on both sides. Remove the calibration blocks and just save them for later. You can put the linear bearing on. Now's a good time to install the included grease inlets. And just remember to put your grease fittings on the outside so that once that plate is on it, you'll still have access to grease them in the future. And use the included grease gun to go ahead and grease all the linear bearings. Now we'll add on the racks. Teeth go down. Slide the gear rack back so that it's 4 inches from the front of the machine. I just want to point out that this is the step that you decide which side you want to be the front of the machine. If you make it 4 inches from this side, that's the front. If you make it 4 inches from that side, then moving forward, that'll be the front. The dust covers are comprised of 2 parts that combine to make 4 feet. Slide it in on top, facing outward, and snug it up. Go ahead and do the exact same thing to the second side. When you install the riser plate, make sure that you get those bearings seated right on that lip. That's designed as a reference to keep everything square. Next, grab the top plate and this riser channel, and I love how thick they made these plates. These holes are threaded on one side. You install this channel to guide the T-nuts as they go along, but when you get to the last 2, they have to be flipped upward to make clearance for what's going on down below. I can just install the back plate and just sort of tighten everything down loosely. Once you get the main gantry beam, it'll be evident exactly where it needs to sit. Do that for both sides. You can add the T-nuts just on one side. X-axis gantry beam might be a team lift. Carefully place it on the... And now add 2 T-nuts per rung. So I found that the easiest way to do this is to do the T-nuts one at a time. So you can slide the first one into position. Once it lines up, I guess we don't need to tighten those yet, but just kind of get it in place. And then now the second one can go in. And there's 2 more that go in the bottom slots, 1 in each. And then you just want to slide it in until the bolt finds it. So the gantry linear rails get installed in the same way that the y-axis rails do. Then the top one. Just make sure you don't put a T-nut in the last hole. I mean, you won't be able to because that's where the end piece, the end cap goes. So now I'm going to use these jigs to straighten the top, just the top rail. The rack should be 2 3/4 inches from the right side of the gantry without the end cap. Put the end cap on. Then install the bumpers on all 4 ends so that the gantry is constrained and not able to slide off. and secured by 2 bolts. This top gantry plate is lined with these drop-in pins. It should feel very consistent. There shouldn't be any spots where it binds, gets any tighter. The grease adds a little bit of resistance, but it should be consistent. And I'll tighten that one up too. And I'll do the same to the other side, and then I'll bring it into the middle. Just start with tightening this one because the plate is keeping it at the right distance. So I'll fully lock down the plate, and then I'll deal with fastening the bottom linear rail. Install the plate on the bearings. And you can use 2 roll-in T-nuts. The X-axis sensor flag sits 1.5 inches off of this plate, and install the bumper before you get started on the Z-axis. Put the bearings on with the grease fittings facing away from each other. The exact same to the other side and the X-axis. Now we'll assemble the motor assembly. Attach the motor with 4 screws. And you can put on the motor shaft pulley. The top of the pulley should be about 28 millimeters from the base of the motor. Install the spindle assembly by removing the plastic nut and placing a washer in between it and the motor plate. The motor's loose, so you can put the belt on. You can keep that bolt loose while you put a wrench around the nut and turn it against the motor so that it tightens the belt. Put the swivel axle bolt and this eccentric collar in with the pocket facing the bearing. You want the belt to flex less than 1/8 of an inch. This whole assembly can be installed to the gantry. Hold the eccentric collar against the bearing, rotate it clockwise until the bearing itself starts to turn, and then at that point, lock it down with the set screw. You know you did it right if the inner race of the bearing stays fixed by the collar with the axle bolt. Now put the tensioner on. Bracket can be mounted loosely for now. Put the red spring on the tensioner bolt in between 2 washers. This goes through the bracket and into. Spin this bolt just until all the slop is gone, and then go 3 revolutions. This puts the proper amount of tension between the rack and the pinion.
Then you can just put the cable tray 8 1/4 inches from the left side. This cable chain should go 6 slots from the end. Connect it to the bracket. I will get the Z cable chain ready. Need 5 slide-in T-nuts. Then we'll put the cable chain bracket on the top and connect the top to the bracket. It's fastened to the 3rd slot back. Install the cable chain, and I'll slide in the cable track bracket 33 inches apart. And just slide this one about 4 1/4 from the end. So you can remove the top aluminum extrusion from the Z-axis as well as the side rails. This reveals the screw holes needed to attach the whole assembly onto the router. Put in the dust covers. And now the whole aluminum plate can go back on. And now you can install the stepper motor for the Z-axis with the coupler. Put the Z chain on.
The spindle is attached using a tramming mount. Some Z-axis wires go through the 2nd cable chain. Run the 4 red motor wires through the cable chains. The Y-axis motor gets its wire run through the center of the gantry. It can plug in on the other side.